So welcome everyone to our webinar, Plural Pride Meets LGBT Pride. This is a discussion that we'll be having over the course of the next hour. I am Dr. Jamie Plus Marriage. Jamie Plus is how I stylize the Jamie that is all of us. Dr. Jamie is really but a part that often fronts when we have to do these professional things. We also use the name the Unicorn System. I'm the author of the book Dissociation Made Simple and the creator of the Dissociation Made Simple flip chart. So it's a little glare coming on the screen. One of the reasons that we scheduled this webinar for today, June 4th, is yes, it's towards the beginning of Pride Month, and we thought this would be a great discussion for ICM to host at the beginning of Pride. This was also the original release date that North Atlantic Books scheduled for the Dissociation Made Simple flip chart. Due to some production delays, July 9th is now the official release date. But I thought it would still be fun to celebrate the original release date here at the beginning of Pride. And the reason that I invited the three panelists that I invited today is I'll let them explain how they identify. All are contributors to the original Dissociation Made Simple book, which came out last year. And I know a lot of you here are familiar with that book. And the contributors, people who shared from their lived experience, are really the heart and soul of the book. And if you've read Dissociation Made Simple, you likely remember hearing from Garden System, from LS, and from Melissa's. So in addition to being the author of Dissociation Made Simple, a person who is out and proud about my own dissociative experiences, I am also someone who identifies as bisexual. I am someone who identifies as genderqueer, and I have just been fascinated by looking at what this word pride means throughout my own evolution of my own journey with pride, and what that has been like to progressively come out further and more fully in certain spaces as I've grown up as a person, and hopefully as I've grown up as a professional. So I'm based here in Youngstown, Ohio, which is on Erie Nation land. And for the sake of visual description, I am a woman with blonde hair, a slightly chubby face, and I'm wearing a black sweater over a hot pink top and a little rainbow circle necklace. So that is me. And I'm going to turn it over to my friends, the Garden System, to introduce themselves and how they identify.
Hi, everybody. So I go by Garden System for the most part. Legally, my name is Tiffany. I'm now working as a registered mental health counselor intern. At the time Jamie interviewed me for Dissociation Made Simple, I was working as a financial advisor. So it has been quite the journey to make this transition over into this field. Yes, I'm very excited about all of it. So we go by the pronouns she, her. Even though not all of our parts or alters identify as female, but we still use the she, her pronouns. We are married to a woman, and I don't know that we really have identified any particular label for ourselves. I guess we would call ourselves a lesbian at this point in our journey, when we are definitely on a journey still. So thank you.
Thank you, Garden System. LS and the Ninja Turtles, you're up next.
Woo! Yeah, so like I made myself notes. Don't judge.
No judge.
And I probably need bifocals because I need to take them off to see. So I identify as a non-binary transmasculine individual in a lesbian appearing relationship, marriage. My wife, who is here, Melanie, is straight. She's also plural. So I too am plural. I think I'm most closely, trying to pin it down even for myself is interesting. But demisexual is really what feels right for us. Like we have to have that emotional connection. I personally have to have that. We're a DID system. And the body, the original body bus driver, Heather, came out as lesbian in 2000, and I, not really identifying as lesbian, have been body bus driver since 2016, and that has been a whole different interesting factorization, and trying to like navigate that. And we were diagnosed DID in 2002, which we've been out from diagnosis on for the most part. It was a unique experience that we've had, but yeah, I think I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor. I own a practice that specializes in the treatment of dissociative disorders in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We have therapists that are duly licensed in multiple states now. And we are always expanding. Texas might be the next one. Who knows? We'll see. But that's where we are. And thanks for having us, Jamie.
Thank you, LS and friends. And then Melissa's.
Hi, we're Melissa's. We are a non-binary system. We're dykes if you're family. We are queers or lesbians if you're kin. We've been out for about 30 years. We came out in 1992 as lesbian, and things just got more interesting ever since then. We are a DID plural system who live and work in Arlington, Massachusetts, which is the traditional and unceded land of the Massachusetts people. We're sitting in our office right now where we see folks like us who have DID. And we're really happy to be here. For a description, we are fair-skinned, freckled, we're wearing glasses, and we have brown hair that has pink streaks, and a bunch of our tattoos are hanging out today. So that's us.
Great. Thank you, friends, for joining us. And really thank you for the bottom of my heart for the contributive work that you did to Dissociation Made Simple. Your lived experience that you shared in that book has helped so many of us to be able to better understand DID. And yeah, I'm hoping we can just have a discussion today really about this general concept of pride, because like as you introduced yourselves, I heard you mention I came out as DID, or I was diagnosed in this year, or I came out about my sexuality or my gender in this year. And I know so much of our story is that I don't want to get into the fullness of it, other than I will often say it was more challenging to come out as somebody with OSDD, as somebody with dissociative disorders in our field, than it was to come out as a queer person in the mental health field, because there is such discrimination about people with dissociative disorders still in mental health, from the wide ranging, oh, it doesn't exist, you're all just faking it, to, okay, yeah, it exists, but DID is like the hardest thing you can have. And a lot of these discriminatory tones about people who are plural, as we collectively tend to call ourselves, are very well known. And I will say that both comings out were challenging in their own way, because growing up in a doubly religious family, having two very religious parents and siblings, it is still a challenge where we're not fully accepted for who we are. And that is something we can say that we feel both in general society, especially because of sexuality, especially amongst a lot of religious people. And in our field, we still feel a lot of that discrimination about being somebody who is actually proud to have a dissociative disorder, as opposed to something that is really hidden in the shadows. So since all of us are, queer, non-binary, genderqueer, somewhere on the rainbow spectrum, and since all of us are plural, I wanted us to have a conversation here about what pride means, maybe what the two movements can learn from each other. So I want to start just in general with the question, and we could go around in the same order that we introduced ourselves with. What does pride mean to you? If you think of pride with a capital P in any context, Garden System, what does pride mean to you?
You know, for us, the first word that really comes to mind is authenticity. You know, being okay with who all of us are, being proud of who all of us are. You know, we live in a world full of spectrum. You know, we are all unique, we are all different, and you know, we say that if you've met one DID system, you've met one DID system. Like there is a whole spectrum to this, and so pride is, you know, just being able to just be me in whatever context that happens to be, and not having to worry or fear that we're being judged for any of the things that we are. So yeah, I think authenticity is the first word that comes to mind. I can just be whoever we all are, and it's okay.
What about you, LS?
Yeah. So like, I think for all of us, the Willow Collective, pride really means like inclusion and rights, like personal rights. I mean, the right to put the entire spectrum flags in front of my home without needing to like check my security camera every 5 minutes, right? Like, I mean, it means acceptance and inclusivity, and independent of other people's beliefs. And we could like get into like beliefs and how they affect people, and you know, what constitutes a belief versus a truth. But like that's not what today's about. Today's about pride. And you know, like it essentially is being able to live and let live. Especially if you're perceived as different.
Yeah. Yeah. And Melissa's, what does pride mean to you?
Love. It means fierce, embodied, and unapologetic love for myself, for my community, for all of us, and everything that we are and all that we are.
Yeah.
Word.
So since the word authenticity, seems very much of, I heard authenticity, I heard love, being able to be who you are. Have you had similar challenges to that as it relates to sexuality and gender and plurality? Or have the challenges been different with being able to really be authentic? And
I have found an enormous amount of similarities. You know, everybody wants me to fit in this box or to be a certain way or to show up a certain way. You know, in my very conservative religious family, like the idea that I'm married to a woman is absolutely abhorrent. But so is being plural, so is being multiple, so is having DID. Like I can't be Garden System, I can't be Leanne, I have to be Tiffany. You know, and I can't have a wife. Like that's just like there's a certain way of being. And so it doesn't really matter, you know, in what spectrum or area I show up in, there's this expectation of who I'm supposed to be with certain people. And as a society, we impose these things on our family members, our close friends, like, well, it's okay if so and so down the street is married to a woman, but it's not okay if you're married to a woman, you know. And I think, you know, there's definitely some differences, but I have found a lot of similarities where it just never felt really safe enough to just be Garden System in any context until I kind of found the community here, you know, with an Infinite Mind and the people in the DID community. Probably that was the first time I ever felt fully accepted and not really questioned or expected to be a certain way.
yeah. I know in my family, obviously the sexuality is something that is not accepted, especially with them being very religious people. And interestingly, I've kind of recently rub up against any discussion about DID or plurality. There's this sense of that's off limits to talk about too, because that means, well, you're blaming us for things that happened because we did something wrong. And yeah, I don't know if any of you have run into that.
I think they're both really intimate and also public things that we're talking about. You know, I'm struck by the similarity of coming out, you know, when gay still wasn't super cool, even in Connecticut where I grew up, but basically telling the world who I loved and who I wanted to have sex with.
Mhm.
Of course, straight people do that all the time, but that's just considered
It's
to be
expected.
a standard. Right. But then, so I'm coming out, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a big old dyke. I'm into girls, you know, and it was like, oh, that's inappropriate. You shouldn't talk about that. I'm like, well, why not? The straight people are all the time. Look at their wedding rings and their husbands. And you're saying who you're sleeping with when you say you have a husband. So why is it wrong for me to say this? And
Right.
then coming out as DID, it's also a really intimate thing. You're telling people, because you have DID, we all know how people get DID, right? You've been really badly abused for a really long time in some really fucked up ways.
Mhm.
So it's still putting out personal information that is also, I think, important to be public.
Mhm.
There's a lot of parallels there for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
LS?
I was just gonna say, like, I mean, our experience was so different because we came out 2 years apart from each other, not knowing that it was not accepted because we were college student and in a small music department, which most of us were gay anyway. And most of us were somewhere on, the spectrum. Not everybody, but like even the folks who weren't were very embracing of the gayness. And then with the DID, just a few years later, it was kind of like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, all right, cool. We're one big family. Well, we will protect and so like my first master's program was a real big shock. Although we were out, we were also just a number.
Mhm.
And that was a thing. And the sexuality was not an issue either, because like, it's a music department of 600 graduate students, just the graduate program, so it wasn't about it not being cool or it not being kosher to be these things. It was really the environment that we were at in the time that we were at in it, understanding these things about ourselves that made it okay.
Mhm.
And even our mom, I mean, we can remember collectively being 16, and we were extremely conservative Christian. My mother was not. That was me trying to find some belonging and healing.
Mhm.
And at 16, she says, Heather, it's okay if you're gay. And it was like, damn, I am not gay. I am a Christian. And slammed the door, So she knew before we even knew.
Right.
And was okay with it. So like our experience is kind of something out of a fairy tale, I think, for
Yeah.
most people.
Yeah. So for those of our listeners, those guests here in the webinar, some of you are aware of this more than others, but there is a hashtag being used, Plural Pride. There's been an emerging Plural Pride movement in recent years. Basically, that supports and advocates for what the four of us and our parts are doing here, which is being out about the fact that we live with dissociative identities. We may use we pronouns. And my journey is such that I decided to come out publicly in 2018, largely because I was diagnosed in 2004. And I learned to live with and manage this diagnosis that made a great deal of sense to me. And I just got very discouraged with the way I heard others, especially in the EMDR community, of which I'm a very active part, talk about dissociation and dissociative disorders with this attitude of fear that we got to be super careful. And there was just a lot of myths and misinformation that swirled around even amongst trauma professionals. So our very public coming out was as a way of saying, hey, me too, I want to open up a dialogue here because there are so many more dissociative people in your midst than you may even realize. And yeah, there are many professionals in the field, even in trauma circles, who don't like that I've done this. There's this sense of, just don't talk about your personal life so much. It's unprofessional. Or there are others who can't possibly understand how I can be proud of being plural. And the more I have kind of fought some of this in the last 6-7 years since my own coming out, it has hearkened a lot of the parallels between how the gay pride movement, the LGBT pride movements have grown, and what we're seeing as plural pride. And it can also be pride around other mental health diagnoses as well. It's not just dissociative disorders or dissociative conditions or plurality, but since that's my lane of experience, that and addiction, that's what I'm most keen to speak on. So yeah, that's the thing, plural pride. And for some of you listening, this might be new for you to hear that, or you might be wondering, how is this something people can be proud of? So I'm going to turn it over to the panel here and ask you the question that I often get, like, how is this something to be proud of? Garden System, we'll go with you first.
I absolutely love this topic, because I think there's this huge misconception about plurality in and of itself. I mean, plurality is a spectrum. Everybody has parts to some extent, right? It's just that ours have a lot more autonomy than some of the other people's parts do, and to not have pride in my parts is to not have pride in myself, is to reject part of myself. And we have this tendency to reject our inner children, reject our inner teenagers. And that does not lead to harmony. That does not lead to functionality. That leads to more compartmentalization. That leads to further dissociation when you reject any part of yourself. And so I can have pride because I can learn to love even the darkest aspects of myself. And that is something that society in general needs to get better at doing, is recognizing the parts of yourself that maybe you don't like that much. Because as soon as you start showing love and compassion to the darker sides of yourself, that's really where the true healing comes in. And the true quote disorder is not the fact that we have parts, is not the fact that we're a multiple. The disorder was the suicidal ideation. The disorder was the depression. This disorder was the dysfunction, and where we couldn't work and we couldn't take care of our kids and we couldn't take care of our house and we couldn't do the things that brought us joy. And the fact that we couldn't feel emotions at all, that was where the disorder lied. So when we were able to get all of ourselves on the same team, and to have common goals and to bring ourselves together and have cooperation, that's when the distressing symptoms started to go away. That's when the suicidal ideation stopped. As soon as I accepted all of me and brought all of us together and showed all of my self-love and be like, I'm proud of each and every part of myself for all the things that you helped us survive, like that's the pride.
Yes. And I'm smiling because now that feels like such common sense. By learning to embrace and acknowledge all of me, that's the pathway to healing, not trying to, shut down the parts and what they have to say. LS, what about you? How is being plural something you could possibly be proud of?
Well, I see it as, in order, I am plural because of the trauma I've lived through. the trauma this body has lived through. And because of every part, aspect, headmate, alter, whatever word we want to call it, because that's unique to every system as well. I'm here today. And how can I not be proud of this body's brain who has allowed us to survive, and not only just survive, but like thrive. Like I own a practice. Like I don't worry about some of the things that other people worry about. Like, I mean, I have created a life that I'm happy to live. And that's not just because of me, LS, that's because of this system. That's because of the Willow Collective being, I know some people hate this word, resilient, but that is exactly what it is. It is adaptive resilience. We figured out a way for all of us to continue life, even when we shouldn't have, and we had every reason not to.
Yeah.
And we keep doing that every day. That, I mean, what's not to be proud of?
Yeah.
Like, fuck yeah. Sorry.
No, it's all right. We're good with that. So, and Melissa's had one of my most memorable quotes in Dissociation Made Simple, the main book, which is that our stories have been told by people who know nothing about us. In looking at kind of the general scope of dissociation education in the field right now. And Melissa's and so many other folks and systems had their platform, you know, to speak. So Melissa's, I still want to thank you for that amazing quote. And yeah, how is being plural something you are proud of? Anything you want to share on that?
Yeah, I mean, how couldn't we be proud of this? We've literally lived through hell 10 different ways in 4 different directions. And our mind created exactly what we needed for us to rescue ourselves and for us to live a really good life and have wonderful relationships and not repeat any of the things that were done to us or internalize any of the values or thoughts or rules of any of the people who harmed us. You bet your ass I'm proud of that. You bet your ass we're all proud of that. And I see the parallels. I mean, having come out in a really different world 30 years ago, before we even knew we were plural, before we even knew anything about ourselves, but we knew we were gay. That was pretty clear. But when we came out, you know, the world did not want gay people. Don't ask, don't tell was still a thing. There was still rampant and above ground discrimination for housing, for healthcare, for employment, for schooling, you name it. This was just normal. I think it wasn't until 1993 that the World Health Organization declassified homosexuality as a mental illness. That's the climate we came out in. We came out in a climate where in our hometown, a gay man was beaten to death in the middle of broad daylight on a main intersection, and nobody interceded because gays what gays get. Gays get what gays get. So we're seeing parallels in the pushback that a lot of us who are reclaiming our stories, who are saying, hey guys, thanks for trying, but you got this wrong, and here's why. In the mainstream, we're getting the same pushback in a lot of ways that the queers got in the 90s. And granted, from what I understand from my older friends, coming out in the 90s was a picnic compared to coming out in the 60s or 70s. So we're all getting somewhere, but I do see a lot of parallels in the pushback from establishment and the attempts to silence us and minimize us and vilify us and dirty us up. It's a lot of the same.
Yeah, because part of the establishment dialogue happening right now, and you know, I'm just going to summarize this briefly for those of you on the call who are not familiar with this, is one of the narratives is that shame is something that accompanies people who present for help with a dissociative condition or DID, that you tend to see a lot of shame accompanied with DID. So these folks who go on TikTok and our social media and are kind of announcing their diagnosis to the world. And people like us who are like, yeah, we're proud of this, we're either faking or we're out of our minds because, you know, DID is so connected with shame. How could people, and when some leaders in the field were really kind of attacking the social media creators with that shame criterion, we really bristled, because of course, a lot of people who are newly presenting for services for anything can be filled with a great deal of shame, especially because some of the things I may needed to do to survive are things that went against my values, or things that do fill me with a lot of shame, or maybe there's a lot of shame that's connected with the things that were done to me, or because of my religious rearing, that there's just a lot of shame attached. And it's just so offensive to me that shame has been put out there essentially as an unofficial diagnostic criterion. And yes, I think shame is something we have to talk about on all of these identities that we're discussing today, whether it be due to gender or sexuality, or whether it be due to plurality. But shame is not going to be made better by amplifying it.
No.
I think pride is the antidote to shame.
Word.
Yeah. And the shame isn't ours.
Mm-mm.
We can mistake it for ours. We can take it in and think it's ours, but it's not.
Yeah.
You know, as a previous teacher many, many years ago, you know, when you think about trying to do identity work and trying to figure yourself out, you know, we didn't have social media back in the day.
Mhm.
You know, we didn't have this way to express ourselves, you know, and we have younger kids today, we have the teenagers, we have the people in their 20s. They now have something that none of us ever had before, you know. And so if you got diagnosed back in the day, like, your way to express yourself was through your own artwork or journaling, but it was always private. You didn't have a way to publish things. You know, you had to like go to a traditional book publisher if you wanted anything published. But nowadays, like, anybody can get on and make an account. And sometimes it's not that they're on there for attention, but they're on there because that's how they can express themselves. That's how this generation knows how to do creativity and generate and share in this way. You know, they don't have paper and pencils. They have AI art, and they're going to post it. And so I think we twist it, you know, because we want to look at it from how we grew up. We want to look at it from the tools that we had, you know. And shame is something that, yes, a lot of people have initially when they get diagnosed, but as you start to deconstruct that shame, as you go through therapy and you get rid of that shame, it's not going to be there. So why would we want to keep something on somebody that we just got rid of, you know? And they're just, you know, it's a way to express yourself, to figure out who you are. And when you have multiples of you, like, there's a lot more identity work that goes into that, because it's not just who is Tiffany, like, it's who is Garden System, who is Leanna, who is Sadie, who is Daisy, who is Jenny, all of the names. Like, it's so much more encompassing than that. And I think we're very quick to judge because we want, again, to put people in a box. We're trying to say this is what's normal, you know, but what is normal anyway?
Yeah. Boxes are neater. And I have seen, you know, religion obviously and society like their boxes. I've seen our field really take a lot of comfort in their boxes too. And I think queer people, gender nonconforming people, you know, have this beautiful gift of being able to live outside of the box. And I see plural people do that as well. And for those of us who have the intersection of the two, you know, I think we have a lot to offer. So just by way of two quick commercials before we move on, I have one more question for the panel, and then I want to open it up to some of you if you have continued questions. So today's webinar discussion and the replay is free, although we do like to promote a nonprofit organization whenever we do something free, if you are compelled to donate. So this month I'm partnering with the LGBT Center of Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland is very near where I live. I'm going to be doing some programming work with them in the fall that I'm very excited about. And so I put up their link here in the chat for the LGBT Center of Cleveland. If you are compelled to make a donation of any kind for Pride, I would certainly invite you to do that. And again, the reason we scheduled this webinar for today, yes, it's the beginning of Pride Month. We're also celebrating the release of the Dissociation Made Simple flip chart. Today was the original release date, but due to some publishing delays, July 9th will be when the full version gets shipped out if you have pre-ordered it. North Atlantic Books is running a special. I'm going to put these codes in the chat as well. If you want to order within the United States, they do cover the shipping. And if you use this code, and they're giving me 2 codes to use. There's one you could use for the flip chart. And then if you still want to order the original Dissociation Made Simple through them, you can access this on Penguin Random House as well. You use DMS 25 for that. So I'll try to email this around as well afterwards so that you have that information. All right, my friends. So the last kind of official question I have, and then if you, dear friends who are joining us on the webinar, want to ask a question of our panel, you can go ahead and put that into chat. So obviously I have kind of led the charge about making this comparison, because especially as somebody who is out in both, I see a lot of comparisons. I think the Plural Pride movement has a lot that we can learn from gay pride, LGBTQ plus pride, trans pride, and the evolution of those movements. One of the criticisms that I have heard about this comparison, though, is that being LGBTQ plus is just how you are. And we've really made active attempts to resist any narrative in the field that people are gay or trans or queer as a result of abuse. Even though there are some in the field who really want to, promote that narrative. Whereas being plural generally happens as the result of some kind of trauma or abuse. And some of us are even challenging that narrative in certain circumstances too. That plurality may just be a way certain minds are built, and the trauma or abuse can create the perfect storm for a person to develop, a formal disorder. But, how would any of you respond to the criticism that making this parallel isn't fair between LGBT pride and plural pride, because people are not gay or trans or queer as a result of abuse, whereas people tend to be plural because of trauma or abuse?
I
Go. I can tell you want to go.
I have thoughts. I think that pride, whether it's plural pride or LGBTQIA plus P plus pride, pride is pride. And I know that was Melissa's quote that she says often, and it is, but in the way that this body didn't choose the hard road in life. This body also didn't choose to be traumatized. And at the end of the day, this is where we are. This is who we are. We were traumatized. We are not the normative hetero female appearing person. We are the opposite of that, in fact. And yeah, I mean, in most cultures, I think it is assumed that children are not going to be abused. The two don't equate each other, but at the end of the day, this is where we are now. So why not be proud of how we've managed to survive?
Thank you for that. We didn't choose to be traumatized either. That's a good answer I have to that clap back. Thank you. Melissa's, go ahead.
Yeah, we totally agree. Like, we can understand the dissonance that LGBTQIA plus folks have at the similarity from the angle of, our sexual and gender identities used to be and still are really deeply pathologized. There was always this narrative that, oh, if you're gay or if you're lesbian, it's because you got abused. And I think that's still on the heels of our community. I think that's still somewhere around the corner. So we do have some understanding and some empathy for that. And at the same time, as somebody who's both, as a system who is largely very queer through and through, and very much a DID system, I do think we have the right to self-determine who we are and how we are. And we personally see huge ties in between our sexual identity, our gender identity, and our plurality. I think we'd probably be some type of plural, whether we'd ever know it consciously or not, even had we not been a traumagenic DID system. So while I understand that there's still kickbacks from pathologizing sexuality and gender, and that should be discussed, and that's real, and that should be addressed, I don't think that's a reason to disqualify the lived experiences of so many of us.
Yep. And garden system.
Yeah, you guys kind of said a lot of the thoughts that I had, that, yeah, like we didn't choose to be traumatized. We didn't choose to be abused. I didn't consciously make up all these parts, to become a plural or DID. This is just literally how we developed. We are a combination of our genetics and our environment and our experiences. And we could sit around and argue about the origins of all the things all day long, but at the end of the day, you know what? We don't really know. We don't really know as much as we think that we know. And what good does it do to try to point out if you're real or not real or fake, or, or what does that do for any of us? It doesn't do anything. The best thing to do is to look at each other with love and acceptance and be with each other here and now, right? Isn't that what we teach in therapy anyway, to be mindful and to be here and now? That's what matters.
Yes, indeed. So just one final reminder, if there's any questions or comments that you want to make for our panel, now is the time. We can open that up for about 5 minutes here as we go towards the end. And I think the parting thought that I have that applies to it all, and this is a story I've told in a few of my books. It was 2015, and that was the year a lot happened for us in 2015. Marriage equality became law of the land. There was a lot shifting in our personal life. And even though we had been out and queer and dating all genders prior to 2015, we were out to the people who were closest to us, to the people who truly mattered in our life. But we were only out selectively in professional contexts with people we felt safe enough with. I would often say it's not something we actively try to hide, but it's not anything we broadcast. And in 2015, we did decide to broadcast it publicly because, as the story goes, we won an advocacy award that year, and it was gifted to us as being an ally. And I knew I couldn't go on saying I'm an ally, that, hey, the reason LGBT plus rights matter so much to me and to us is because I am a queer person. And so I knew coming out publicly would mean I had to come out to my family, because, they would see it on social media, they would see it in an article. So here we go. Yeah. So I decided, to come out to my family and come out publicly. And a lot of what was the impetus for that was a talk that I attended with Robert Ackerman, who is a well-known specialist in the drug and alcohol field, especially working with family dynamics, dysfunctional dynamics, et cetera. And, towards the end of his career, we were both keynoting a conference, and I made sure I went a day early to hear him keynote. And he said, you can never hope to be the healthiest person you can possibly be unless you are fully honest and authentic about all of who you are. And as he said that, I was immediately convicted internally on the sexuality front. Like, hey, I'm on the cusp of coming out. And just hearing him saying that, I knew I was doing the right thing. We were doing the right thing. And how much that ended up applying to me so many years later when I decided to come out about plurality as well. So yeah, authenticity. So any final thoughts on the fusions of these two pride movements, your own story, your own experience with authenticity? Garden System, the floor is yours.
I think that we need to not try to tell other people who are what they are. And we need to kind of honor that we are all unique individuals in every way. And that is a thing to be celebrated, not shunned.
Thank you. LS?
Yeah, well, what Garden System said, but also like it's okay to be who you are, and it takes a lot of bravery and a lot of I guess understanding to do that publicly. But whether it's publicly or just even to yourself, I mean, that's healing. And although we feel the shame that other people throw on us, since it's not ours, there is no shame in that game of being real with who you are, at least to yourself. Even if you're not in an environment where you can be, all out as it can be about all the things, be that out to yourself. And, try to resist the internal challenging of those things, because I'm going to be real, the world gives us those predetermined thoughts already. It's not okay to be gay, or, it's, this is all in your head, or, strike all of that. Like, just be you for you, and do that in the biggest way that you can for yourself. That's also safe.
Melissa's.
We're just so grateful for this conversation, and especially talking about maybe the tension between some folks dealing with us equating, plural pride and LGBTQIA pride. The conversation's open. We need this conversation. I think we also need to celebrate difference and diversity of opinion and lived experience within our community. There's a lot of us, more and more of us are finding community every day. And I think there's got to be room for these conversations. So thank you so much, Jamie's, for hosting this. And, we're going into, I really hate to say it, but I'm pretty sure we're going into 4 more years of a really hard time here in the US. And I think we need to have conversations to bring us all closer in our communities, whether it's LGBTQIA, whether it's plural, whether it's both, whether it's something else. But we need to have conversations. We need to get good with difference, because we need each other. And I think in the next 4 years, we're going to need each other even more.
What they said.
Yep. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. So just as a closing, I can make a few posts here. First and foremost, I want to promote LGBT Center of Cleveland once more. If you like what we did today and feel that there's some value in what we had to offer, this is a complimentary program on ICM's part. So if you'd like to make a donation forward, paying it forward, I'd recommend the LGBT Center of Cleveland today. I also understand from one of our participants that there was some issues around the code flip chart 34, which is what I was given by the publisher. I don't know. It seems like that I didn't get any complaints on that code, but the code for the main book DMS 25 is a problem. If you're running into an issue with any of the codes, I'm going to put an email in here that you can use, jamie@redefinetherapy.com, and I will pass it along to customer service on North Atlantic Books End, because they just give me the codes. I'm not really sure about them working or not. So yeah, the code that they gave me was flip chart 35 for the flip chart. Flip chart 35. If you wanted to order the flip chart, and again, it is free shipping within the US. And for the main Dissociation Made Simple book, the code that they gave me anyway was DMS 25. But I understand that's not working. You could probably try the flip chart code if you're running both of them through at the same time. But yes, if you are running into any problems after the webinar, if you could just send us an email, jamie@redefinetherapy.com. And I will pass it along to North Atlantic Books. To our panelists as well, if you want to drop in the chat information on where people could find you and your work, you are welcome to do that here before we closed. I want to thank again the Garden System. I want to thank LS, and I want to thank Melissa's, who have been very proactive in adding their voices to the chorus about lived experience of the plural experience and lived experience about gender and sexuality and pride. And I will also put in Institute for Creative Mindfulness's website. As a lot of you know, we're one of the largest EMDR training providers here in North America. We do pride ourselves, specialize ourselves on really welcoming especially our EMDR basic training spaces to clinicians who are plural, who don't often feel a hospitable welcome in training spaces. And yeah, some advanced topics, etc. Other programs, we try to do some free programming like this as much as we can, really just as a community service. Well, thank you for those of you who are sharing your kind comments coming through. And yeah, stay connected. Melissa's and a few of us mention an Infinite Mind and the Healing Together conference, which happens every February. I know an infinitemind.com, that beautiful organization founded by Jamie Pollock, is responsible for bringing the four of us together and meeting, as did the Dissociation Made Simple book. My group is technically a company, we are a training company that is for profit, but we do try to make community events like this available as much as we can for engagement. And you can also go to another website that I keep, redefinetherapy.com. And that is where everything I've done for free can be accessed. On Institute for Creative Mindfulness, we'll have the replay of this webinar. We'll also put the replay up on YouTube and on the Facebook page. Thank you, though, for those of you who were able to join us in real time. Happy Pride, everyone. Till we meet again. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.